Big doings in New York City over the weekend. On Sunday, actually, that's what I'm going to talk about here in the first segment. I mentioned in the weekend podcast that I do for the Patreon supporters and the subscribers to this podcast that as of Sunday afternoon, I was really disappointed because there was no video coverage on CNN or MSNBC or the three networks, over-the-air networks, broadcast networks, about what was occurring in New York City. The huge demonstration where, again, hundreds of thousands of people showed up to march to the UN to let the people who are meeting at the UN this week understand the importance to so many of us, if not all of us in this country and globally, the importance of saving life on this planet by getting global warming under control. Apparently, we're not going to reverse the damage we've done so far, but we can slow the deterioration of the climate. And God knows, we all had many examples of what this out-of-control climate can do. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people, if not tens of thousands of people, have died in 2023 because of climate-related disasters, whether it was floods or hurricanes or massive fires or whatever it has been. But the demonstration yesterday in New York City, even though I couldn't find anything online until late yesterday afternoon, early evening in the New York Times, I had a correspondent there, my daughter Molly, who went to the demonstration with several of her girlfriends from college. And she pretty much gave me a description, blow-by-blow description, so to speak, of what happened and the makeup of the crowd, insofar as she could tell. And one of the things that really cracked me up, and I mentioned this on the weekend podcast, one of the things that cracked me up, she referred to, Daddy, at least 40% of the people are old people. And to my daughter, I'm afraid, to anybody who's 19, an old person is somebody either right at or just over the age of 50, right? But her point being, what I've talked about so many times, and she's aware of this, that if we are going to get global warming under control, and this applies to a number of crises that we're facing as a human species, we're going to have to rely on the young people. And I think Molly's point was there are not an awful lot of, in her estimation, old people, that would include me, possibly you, who are just as keen on the idea of trying to save life on this planet. So I did get that report. But tens of thousands of people filled the streets of Midtown Manhattan yesterday to demand, just like the unions, the auto workers union, are demanding, in this case, that world leaders pivot away from fossil fuels that are poised to end life on this planet. Seriously. No, it's not going to happen in my lifetime or your lifetime. Maybe not my daughter's lifetime. Maybe not your children's lifetime. Maybe not your grandchildren's lifetime. But the situation is critical and it has to be addressed. Jesus, how many times have we talked about that? A lot of the anger, and my daughter pointed this out to me too, a lot of the anger, whether you feel it's justified or not, was directed at President Biden. He did not show up for this demonstration. I think that would have been profoundly important had he just shown up. I realize it's a logistic nightmare. I get that. I understand. Okay, maybe a video a statement, maybe something on YouTube or Instagram or Twitter or X, whatever the hell they call it now, or Facebook, something. But he did arrive, Biden did, in New York Sunday night because he had several fundraisers scheduled for this week. And he is going to speak before the UN General Assembly session that begins tomorrow, Tuesday. One 17-year-old New York City high school student and an organizer with the organization or the movement called Fridays for Future. Her name is Emma. I better not give her last name because the Christian fascists would try to track her down, although it is in the New York Times. All right, Emma Beretta, she's 17. She said, quote, "Biden, you should be scared of us. If you want our vote, if you don't want the blood of our generations to be on your hands, end fossil fuels." End quote. I mean, you can't get more direct than that. That's one of the things that I thoroughly appreciate with young people is their directness. They don't fuck around. They don't mince words. They don't use so-called diplomatic language or language that is designed to try to spare the elders a little bit of discomfort. They don't do that. They come right out and say it. "Biden, you should be scared of us," this 17-year-old said. You're damn right. Now, the Biden administration has pushed through this sick, filthy Congress of ours that is run by the Christian fascists. He has pushed through the U.S.'s most ambitious climate law so far. Yes, I admit that. Acknowledge it. And he's working. Biden is working to transition the U.S. to wind and solar and other types of renewable energy. But he has also, and this is what the young people are furious about, he's continued to approve permits for new oil and gas drilling. And in fairness, I should add, mostly he does that because it's required by law that has been passed by Democrats as well as Christian fascists in our Congress. So it's not just Biden, although Biden has the bully pulpit. Biden is the leader. Biden should be speaking out more forcefully about this. I realize he's been making statements that indicate his resistance to global warming, to the fossil fuel industry, but he can do more. He really can. I realize we're in a political season, but I also realize that the vast majority of Americans, I think I'm right on this, would like to live a normal life without dying by fire or hurricane or flood caused by global warming. Now, it's well known, and it's been reported by the Times, by the Post, by just about every reliable news source, that a lot of Biden's traditional supporters have been very pissed off about his attitude towards the gas and oil industry, and the coal industry not so much anymore, but gas and oil. And politicians on the left in the Democratic Party are angry, and rightly so. This push of late has been for Biden to declare a climate emergency, which would give him the power to block any new fossil fuel production. Now, that would be very drastic, wouldn't it? It would be very, very much of a jolt to all of a sudden realize that the United States was no longer in the fossil fuel industry business. But as I pointed out over the weekend, since the presidency of Grover Cleveland, the United States has not been collecting the sort of taxes from the fossil fuel industry that they should collect. I mean, even the tobacco industry paid enormous amounts of taxes as it perpetrated its murder against U.S. citizens for decade after decade after decade. How many millions of Americans died, some of us in horrible pain and suffering, because we could not stop the addiction that the cigarette industry pushed on all of us? Well, the fossil fuel industry is doing the same thing, only the target is not just people who do a specific activity like smoking cigarettes or drinking excessive amounts of alcohol. No, the target is everybody. Every single one of us. It doesn't make any difference how healthy a lifestyle you might live. If you live in the United States, if you live on planet Earth, your ass is going to, well, the rest of you too, is going to suffer to the same degree as your neighbor or somebody in a different country because of global climate change. There's no way to avoid it. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is a Democrat from Queens, I believe it's Queens, she drew applause at the end of the march when she was one of the sponsors, I believe, one of the congressional sponsors. I think she might have been the only one. But she described climate action as, quote, an electoral and a popular force that cannot be ignored, end quote. I hope AOC, as she's been called by media, I hope she's correct. I hope that it is a force, this resistance to climate change that can't be ignored. A lot of the protesters were suggesting, with their signs, with their chants, with meetings and seminars and speeches prior to and during, the protesters were suggesting that their support for Biden as he seeks re-election against the orange monster, this murderous son of a bitch Trump, that support for Biden would depend on more aggressive climate action. And keep in mind that not one of the filthy Christian fascist bastards who are running to replace him, the so-called Republicans, plan to cut the country's admissions, and several want to encourage more drilling. And of course, the leader of this pack of banshees and monsters and ghouls that used to be the Republican Party is the filthy orange vomit Donald Trump, who laughs at the idea that global warming is even a reality, much less that the U.S. government should do something about it. Trump is an executioner. I hope you realize that now. He is an executioner. And the people targeted for his political guillotine is all of us, or are all of us, is all of us, whatever. Trump would like nothing more than I mean, he doesn't give a shit if people live or die. I shouldn't say he would like it, because this son of a bitch is not capable of anything that doesn't center on him. But the Christian devils who support him, they don't give a shit about death, because they've convinced themselves, well, we're going to go to heaven, so if you're not saved, you're going to hell. They don't care. They just don't care. You know, that point should be made crystal clear by now. Crystal clear that the reason the Christian devils push this agenda is they don't give a shit. They really don't care if life on this planet ends, because they have their little space in heaven, you goddamn fools. But that's what they believe, right? Anyway, back to Biden. A spokesman for the Biden administration pointed out last year's climate law, you know, what the hell was it called? Inflation Reduction Act. That's right. That part of that act had to do, it really tripped up the Christian demons too in Congress, but part of the act had to do with reducing the amount of support that the U.S. government gives for the fossil fuel industry, and consequently helping to slow global warming. So a spokesperson for Biden pointed out that climate law was evidence of Biden's determination to fight global warming. According to the Times, the spokesman said, quote, President Biden has treated climate change as an emergency, the existential threat of our time since day one, end quote. Well, that is bullshit. That is absolute bullshit, because, and this is no reflection on Biden. Biden is doing, I guess, as much as he can. I don't know what Biden does, if he thinks it through or if he relies on advisors. But to say that Biden has treated climate change as an existential threat, I mean, does the spokesman realize that existential means existence? If Biden were treating this as an existential threat, then I don't think a day would go by, I mean this, where Biden didn't use the bully pulpit one way or the other, bring in the cameras, bring in the reporters, and declare that the country, the planet, is burning up, and we have to stop it. That would be addressing this as an existential threat. You know, to make a comment once in a while, as good as that is, it's just not good enough. To make a comment once in a while to indicate that Biden supports struggling against climate change, it's not going to cut it. It's not going to motivate people. I mean, we all go about our daily life. Well, yeah, what the fuck? Climate change? Yeah, well, maybe. But if the leadership of this country, both parties, the rotting corpse of the Republican Party, which still has a few sentient creatures crawling around in its muck, but if those people would stand up, those so-called Republicans, get out of the slime that is the rot from your Republican Party. Stand up, you son of a bitches. And if the Democrats would stand up, and Biden, and let it be known that they were going to do everything they could to stop this because it is an existential threat. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.